Hey everybody, this is John Ellis, and we had some technical difficulties getting started with the live stream, of course, but Larry is already going, and we're going to cut right over to him right now. Thank you for joining us today, and here we go.
Elections in which you need to participate, the 2018 platform and why you should be excited about being a Democrat in Oregon, and the 2020 Democratic National Convention, of which the planning is already underway. But first, we have a quiz.
All right. So the question number one is, the role of a precinct committee person is to...
And the three options is be a good foot soldier and follow orders, carry out the agenda of the Democratic National Committee, or represent the Democrats in their precinct. So how many people think it's to be a good foot soldier? Raise your hand. Who thinks it's to carry out the agenda of the Democratic National Committee? Raise your hand. Nobody's raising their hand. Who thinks it's to represent the Democrats in their precinct? You are correct.
Well done, well done. Okay, next question. The ultimate power in a democratic organization belongs to?
And the options are the chair, the executive committee, and the people who are members of the organization. So who believes that the ultimate power belongs to the chair? Raise your hand. If you think it belongs to the executive committee, raise your hand. And if you believe it's the people that are the members of the organization, please raise your hand. And again, you are correct.
Well done.
And the next one, it gets into a little bit of democracy and procedures.
Who approves the agenda and decides when the meeting is adjourned?
And this relates to something we'll be talking about a little bit later. So the options are the chair, the executive committee, or the people who are members of the organization. So who thinks it's the chair who approves the agenda and adjourns the meeting? Who thinks it's the executive committee who does this? Raise your hand. And who thinks it belongs to the people or members of the organization? The answer again is number 3. So to present the first segment, Amy's going to talk about precinct committee persons and their role.
So what is a PCP? And so you guys are all newly elected, right? PCPs, and you're here saying, yay, I have now won an election, so now what, right? You were elected, and in some cases appointed, to represent within the Democratic Party the Democrats within your precinct, specifically 500 of them. Your position is registered with the county's election department, and if you were elected, you cannot be removed unless it's by recall. And you take office June 8th, which is coming up, 2018. So you should. What should a precinct committee... Yes?
Is this presentation available afterwards?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. All of it. So you'll have all of this. So what should you do? So you didn't just become a PCP so that you could see your name on the ballot, right? If that was your goal, then you've done it. Congratulations, and yay. But we're hoping that you became a PCP because there is something that is a burning desire within you that you would like to see happen, and you recognize the value of your energy, your focus, your presence to make this democratic process what it is, right? So what do is you've got to build relationships with the Democrats that you represent, the people around you, your neighbors, right? To get them. We at Multnomah County had a 30%, Democrats 40% turnout in the last election. And a lot of people just don't feel comfortable voting. They don't know who to vote for, so they don't turn in their ballots. They're intimidated by the process. And so your job is to really get people engaged, voting at the very least, and hopefully even active, doing something. And it turns out that this is a relationship game. This isn't about just showing up and not continuing. You've got to connect with people, because people, it turns out, they don't vote for just an idea. They vote for a person, and they won't cast their ballots unless they believe in it. So you need to help them come to the table. We need to bring these people back to the table. Let's see. So you're also, as a PCP, voting for officers and delegates that represent you, right? So that represent your ideals, what you believe in. And you're informing the Democrats on candidates running for office. So your job is to get out there and say, hey, have you heard of, I'm looking around, let's see, for Dorothy for Congress. Have you heard of, let's see, I don't see any others. And you're there to talk about the people that are running and why you're excited about them. And then to make sure people vote however possible, because it turns out that this is really a numbers game of if people show up and vote, then we the people win. It's when people believe that they don't have a voice, they believe that their participation is meaningless, that's when we lose. Because when people show up and they're informed and they cast their ballot, it works out in our favor. And our goal is to make it so that at every county level, we build enough people that are out there that are voting that we get to that 50+1. Because it turns out that our elected officials are thinking in terms of getting reelected. They're thinking of the next cycle. So we need to be able to engage enough people so that we are the 50+1. And then all of a sudden our elected officials they're talking to us, they're coming to us, and they care about what we think and what we say. And therefore, they're going to make sure that what we want is made into the law of the land. So that's your job, to help make that happen. Am I done?
Yes. Do we have any questions from the line?
No. Oh.
And do we have any questions from the room?
Anybody?
Okay. Oh, yes.
What does it mean when you come office? What happens? Do we get something?
Oh, yes. So the county clerks, this is the most precinct committee persons that have run for office in decades. So the 36 counties in Oregon are currently certifying who got elected. Typically, counties send you a notification that you were elected to office. Like in my county, in Clatsop County, they're going to send me a certificate saying that I'm an official precinct committee person. You should receive notification from your county organization of when your meetings are, because one of your rights as a precinct committee person is to be informed of your meetings so you can attend and start getting involved.
Will that happen before June 8th?
Probably won't happen before June 8th. And the county meetings could be anywhere during the month. If you want to find out when your county meeting is, I would advise going to the internet and doing a Google search on your county. Many of the counties have posted their meetings there. You can also find it at the Democratic Party of Oregon website, dpo.org, for some of the counties who list their meetings under events. Other questions? Yes?
Is there a map somewhere that describes what our precinct actually encapsulates?
Yes, and this is information that is controlled by the county clerk. So you might call your county elections office, and they could describe the best way to get that information to you. If you're from Multnomah County, of course, which county are you from? From Marion County. So the Marion County is much less dense, and so it's much easier to get the delineation of your precinct. Yes, in the back. I'm sorry, pardon? Write-in candidates. So the question is, what about write-in candidates? It is possible that if you had not registered to run for precinct committee person, you could be written in. So there was a slot in the ballot where you could write that in. If you received 3 ballots, you would be elected. Now there's some caveats to that, like John Knight is here today. John Knight, there's like a dozen of them in Multnomah County, and they said, well, we don't know that they were all referring to you because they didn't use his full legal name. But if they can identify that you have been elected, then you'll be an elected PCP. Is there any other questions? Yes.
Well, I just want to say that in Montgomery County, litigants should expect a letter from elections asking if they want to accept the position. And they have to return that signed form by a date certain in order to be certified.
Yes, and so the comment from the audience was that your county will verify with you that you want to accept the position, because they want to make sure that you actually want to be a PCP and it wasn't just 5 of your friends toying with you. So yes, they will ask for you to verify that you wanted to run for the position, and then you'll be elected. Any other questions? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll go to the next segment. So this segment is about your rights as a precinct committee person. So how many of the room have watched the video of the Democratic convention in 2016 in Nevada? The one that was very long. It was a 16-hour convention, not the greatest planning in the world. 16-hour convention, 3,400 people attending. They did not provide food, but they provided 3 bars. And if it sounds like a recipe for disaster, that's pretty much what they got. The most famous pieces of the video are of Roberta Lang, the chair, making rulings based on voice vote that people were not quite clear that she was ruling in the way that the people voted in the convention. And it ends with her gaveling the session closed. So there are a number of things that went wrong with that, including clarity on who was credentialed to be at that convention to vote. And so this is why it is so important for you to know your rights as a member of a democratic organization, so you know what to expect and what to demand, and know when your rights are being taken away. And if you watch the whole video, this is how the event ended. It was with a lineup of Nevada police officers guarding the stage, so the enraged crowd does not rush the facility and tear it apart or whatever they thought they were going to do. So your rights as a precinct committee person are defined in these documents in this order. So you can go to the Oregon statutes, and these you can also look at online. And see what the state law grants you as a precinct committee person. Your county central committee bylaws are the governing document in each of the counties. And then for things that are not specified in the county bylaws, it defaults to Robert's Rules of Order. So your rights as a precinct committee person: you are entitled to full participation in the proceedings, including attending meetings, making motions, speaking in debate, voting, and any basic right associated with these rights, like making nominations. And these rights cannot be taken away from you except unless you've been bad and you have disciplinary action taken against you. Yeah. Those are the basic rights to all precinct committee persons, both appointed and elected.
So non-PCP Democrats, do they have those rights?
No, not in the central committee, which you are a member of. So by being elected or appointed as a precinct committee person, you become a member of that organization and are entitled to these rights. Meetings are typically open. It is not a right for a non-precinct committee person to speak at a meeting unless that right is extended to them. Any other questions? So, knowledge is power. You need to guard your rights by knowing what they are. Don't approve documents like convention rules that you've not reviewed. Particular areas to watch out for are how credentialing is done. That was one of the pitfalls with the Nevada Convention. There was a lot of ambiguity. There was some ambiguity over who was eligible to vote because they apparently couldn't track down some of the people who had registered. And it wasn't a big deal. It made a difference ultimately of possibly 2 delegates that ended up going to the Democratic National Convention for one of the candidates over the other. But credentialing is critically important because that determines who gets to vote, and there are a lot of votes end up being very close, and so the difference of 1 or 2 people voting could make a difference in the outcome. Things like the agenda, we often assume that the agenda is fine, but at the very beginning of the meeting, if the meeting is run in a democratic manner, you are asked to approve the agenda, and you have the opportunity to amend the agenda because it is the majority will of the body who determines how you're going to spend your time. If the majority wants to spend the hour playing bingo, that is their right to do so. You do not have agendas forced upon you. An exception would be as if the agenda outline has been specified in the bylaws, and then you have to follow what the bylaws state. And then you have to watch out for limits on members' rights. So one of the things that you should be provided as a precinct committee person in your county is a copy of the bylaws of the organization, and that is the governing document that defines how events happen and what you can do as a member and when you can speak and if there's limits on your ability to speak and those sorts of things. So I would highly recommend you take a copy of your bylaws and familiarize yourself with them, and then make sure that the leadership follows them. So if you really want to understand your rights, you should study Robert's Rules of Order. I've been studying these for around 20 years, and it wasn't until the last couple of years that the fundamental concepts really started becoming obvious or apparent to me. If you would like to join a study group, there's 2 ways to do it. In the Portland area, there are 3 groups that meet monthly to discuss Robert's Rules of Order and to learn them and practice them. We are starting a virtual group for all those people who cannot drive to the Portland metro area from the rest of the state, and what we will be doing is studying Robert's Rules of Order virtually, and you can do that by going to pdpo.org and signing up. And there's links there also to the National Association of Parliamentarians website and to the Oregon Association of Parliamentarians, which are the organizations that sponsor the teaching here. And we can help you become a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians if you'd like, and you can also take the exams, become a professional parliamentarian if you would like to do so. Is there any questions on your rights? And so these are the fundamental rights that are associated with parliamentary procedure apart from Robert's Rules of Order upon which they are based. So attending meetings, making motions, speaking in debate, and voting are all fundamental rights guaranteed for you in a democratically run organization. Yes? You can get them from contacting your county organization. So the Democratic Party of Oregon website has a list of all of the counties in Oregon. You can click on your county, and that'll give you the contact information of the officers, and they would be delighted to provide you with the bylaws. Other questions? So, elections in which you need to participate. This is really complicated. So one of the benefits of what we are doing today is we're recording this presentation so you can go back and review segments of it. We're also going to break it up into the different chapters so you don't have to watch the whole thing. So the first thing to remember or to understand is the geographic designators that govern how things are done within the party. So the first one is the county organization. These are chartered by the state. The organization in each county is the county's central committee. So here in Multnomah, it's the Multnomah County Democratic Central Committee. In Washington County, it's the Washington County Democratic Central Committee. There are, it varies. There's some of the counties where the populations are really, really small, and so it's not really clear how active they are, but there is a contact person for every one of the counties. So the first thing you need to know is your county organization, because that governs your participation in the party. The second thing you need to know is your congressional district. This, some people are not quite as familiar with. We in Oregon have 5 congressional districts. 2/3 of the state is the 2nd congressional district, which is the eastern part of the state. And then we have the smallest one, which is Multnomah County, which, or CD2, or excuse me, CD3. And then the other 3 congressional districts are along the coast. So there are organizational structures within the Democratic Party that are based on these geographic designations. So this is a diagram of how DPO leadership is elected, and I'll be going through this in more detail. This is a slide that shows the overall structure. So as you can see, the foundation of the Democratic Party is the Precinct Committee Person, and they elect 3 groups of people. They elect delegates to the DPO State Central Committee. They elect county officers, which is a chair, 1 or more vice chairs, a treasurer, and a secretary for the county. And then they elect delegates to the congressional district committees. The delegates to the State Central Committee then elect 3 groups of people. Every 4 years, they elect the 3 DNC members. They elect, every 2 years, they elect the Democratic Party of Oregon chair, 2 vice chairs, and a secretary. And then they also participate in the election of members of the standing committees within the Democratic Party of Oregon. And there's 5 or 6 committees. There are 3 that are very, very important. One of them is the Platform and Resolutions Committee, which is where the resolutions are crafted and then they're passed to the floor for final vote. If any of you listen to NPR and you hear about the European Union or the United Nations passing resolutions, this is the same thing. It's where they pass beliefs and ideas that get expressed. We have the DPO Rules Committee, which is where the bylaws and motions to the body pass through. And then we have the DPO Credentials Committee, which is how people get credentialed to participate in the State Central Committee. So they keep a list of all the people who are actual designated members of the State Central Committee, and then they are credentialed to vote when they meet every quarter. The delegates to the county district elect as well the members of the standing committees. So there's a joint meeting of the respective delegates from the State Central Committee and the elected delegates from the congressional district to elect the members of the standing committees. And there's a lot of competition to get on to the Platform and Resolutions Committee and the Rules Committee, so because these are such critical committees to be on. So when does this happen? As precinct committee persons, you'll be able to elect your county officers. These generally happen after the November general election and before the end of the following February. This is not a rule, so there's one county that is completely out of cycle. They elected their officers in July of the opposite year. And your officers are elected for a 2-year term. And you'll need to contact your county to find out when your reorganization happens. It is state law that you are notified of this meeting, so they have to tell you that it's going on. The one rule from the state is that they have to reorganize within 25 months, and that gives them a month leeway in a 2-year cycle. They could accelerate that process and have a reorganization several months early if the body decides to do so. Any questions on what the precinct committee persons elect? Yes. Reorganize is the term used when they elect new officers. So you have the officers and delegates that generally have a 2-year term, and so the reorganization is the official meeting where they either re-elect officers or they elect new officers. Any other questions? The Democratic National Committee members are elected by the delegates to the State Central Committee. Currently, we elect 3. When Oregon gets another congressional district seat, which we expect it to do after the next census, we will be electing 4. These elections occur in December after the presidential election, and these are for a 4-year term. So this will not happen again until December of 2020. But the Democratic National Committee members are the people who actually go to the Democratic National Committee meetings. They vote for people like Tom Perez, who's the current chair. The previous chair was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And then they do various other activities within the Democratic National Committee. The Democratic Party leadership is elected by the State Central Committee. They elect a chair and 2 vice chairs, one being a male and one being a female, and a secretary, and that happens in the first quarter following the November general election. So that will be coming up between January and March of 2019. These officers are elected for a 2-year term. It's critically important who the chair is. The chair appoints all of the standing committee chairs. So it's critically important that you have chairs who understand their role and are interested in doing the business of the party. The chair and the first vice chair are also DNC members, bringing the total to 5. So we have 5 congressional districts. We have 5 DNC members. Any questions on that election? Yes. The question is, can people hold multiple positions? The answer is yes, unless the bylaws forbid it. And the one exception I do know is that the treasurer cannot be a chair of a standing committee. But those are articulated in the bylaws, and there's nothing in Robert's Rules of Order that prevent people from holding multiple positions. Other questions? So as I said, the standing committee members are critically important because they are the ones that actually carry out much of the business of the party. They are elected by the 5 congressional districts. The delegates are elected by the 5 congressional districts, along with the Central Committee delegates. They are also 2-year terms, and the elections for these occur within the first quarter after the general election. So the meeting is generally conducted by the congressional district organization, and they invite the delegates to the State Central Committee who participate in an election. And if you were entitled to participate in that, you should be notified so that you can go and vote. And again, they elect the members of the standing committees. So qualifications for chairs, and this refers to both county and state, and this is right out of Robert's Rules of Order. So chairs should be chosen for their ability to preside. They should be well versed in parliamentary law, and that means that they comprehend the principles of democracy and that they are familiar with the state statutes and the bylaws. And that's in Robert's Rules, newly revised, page 449, lines 7 through 12. And really the role of a chair is to follow the will of the majority. The democratically run organizations are not like nonprofits where they have a CEO who runs the ship and makes all the decisions. The role of the chair is really to be unbiased and really to carry out the will of the people. Any questions? Yes? So the Oregon statutes define how the major and minor political parties operate. And then, yeah, those are Oregon statutes. And you can find things like the reorganization of counties have to happen within every 25 months articulated there. And then the bylaws I was talking about are the bylaws of each of the counties and of the Democratic Party of Oregon. You can find the bylaws of the Democratic Party of Oregon posted on the DPO website. And if the counties have, comprehensive websites, you can find the bylaws for each of the counties on their website as well. Other questions? So, Amy's going to talk about the next section. This is why you should be excited to be a Democrat in Oregon, and what we just did earlier this year. Amy.
All right. So, does everyone know what a political party platform is? I see nods. Okay, good. So just the set of beliefs that are accepted as the characteristic of a particular political party to help the public know what principles and values that party stands for. Who are you? What do you stand for? So what happened in Oregon in 2018? So over 500 delegates from across Oregon met to pass an extraordinary peoples-centric platform and legislative agenda items, and did so with exceptional unity. So we have a platform that is something to be very proud of here in Oregon for what the Democratic Party stands for here in this state. So sample platform components, we support the rights of all Oregonians to access the basic necessities of life such as food, water, healthcare, sleep, and shelter. We believe that undocumented immigrants and workers and their families should have a path to legal residency and eventually citizenship. We believe that money is not speech. We believe that money is not speech, and government at all levels should be regulate, limit, and prohibit campaign contributions and expenditures to restrict the influence of private or corporate wealth in the election of candidates. That's right. Because otherwise you can't have a democracy. So, yay. We support strong labor laws and elimination of the at-will employment laws. Yeah, right? Because otherwise... We affirm the right to organize for collective bargaining free of intimidation, of coercion, supply the Employee Free Choice Act, card check, and oppose any legislation such as the right to work and fair share limitation measures that would restrict these rights. Yeah. So this platform is amazing, and this is agreed upon for all of Oregon. Something to be proud of. Another one, we support equal pay for equal work without qualification. Right? Because we don't have that at the federal level. Right, ladies? Oregon Democrats fully support tribal sovereignty and tribal jurisdiction by honoring treaties and federal statutes that are the foundation of trust relationships between tribes and government. Yeah. So, what does this mean for you as a PCP? So, this strong people-centric platform can be used to recruit and elect candidates that support these policies, right? Because it's one thing to have a platform, but we need our elected officials to take that platform and say, I'm going to make this the law of the land. And that's our next step. To justify support for legislation from our elected officials. So they're here and say, this is the platform. You are a Democrat, therefore this needs to be your highest priority. And to demonstrate to non-affiliated voters that the Democratic Party is the party of the people. Because we have a huge, they're called NAVs, non-affiliated voters, and the motor voters gotten them all registered to vote. And now we need to figure out how to get them to vote and to see that the Democratic Party is really where they should affiliate. All right, questions? Yes?
Those that you just listed, where are those available?
Oh, that's a good question. Larry? Yeah, it should be on the DPO.
Yes, if you go to dpo.org, there's the first section is called the party, and if you go to the very bottom, they list the party, platform, and the second thing, which is called legislative agenda items. So the platform is the beliefs, and the legislative agenda items are the things that we would like the legislature to enact.
Melissa?
Can you describe briefly how we arrived at the draft platform that we voted on at the convention so that people understand the mechanics behind how the platforms were developed?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, how was the platform arrived at? They did outreach to all of the caucuses within the Democratic Party of Oregon and to all of the counties for their input, and they used prior documents and they pulled them all together. Anything that was similar, they did their best to combine the language so that the things weren't represented multiple times. And this was an enormous amount of work that the Platform and Resolutions Committee did. And then they also collected the legislative agenda items at the same time. And then we had a convention that lasted 2.5 days. The Saturday of the convention was going over the legislative agenda items, prioritizing them, and getting them in a final format to vote on. And then Sunday was spent voting on the actual planks of the Democratic Party of Oregon. So everybody in the convention was in one room, and we voted on them. And it was, as we said earlier, it was amazing how little dissent and disagreement there was. And these were from representatives from all corners of the state. It wasn't any rural versus urban divide. It was astonishing cohesion. The legislative agenda items were then put out for a vote, and people could vote on those. And then the top, I believe, approximately 14 were then top 20? 22. The top 22 were then designated the set that we would focus on and talk to the legislature. So we've tried over the years to close that gap between the party and the legislature so that the people in the legislature understand the issues that are most important to their constituents.
Yes?
Is that a comprehensive list of the platforms?
No. Oh, I know. It's just some highlights.
We would be here until midnight if we went through the whole thing. It's actually an extraordinary document, and it's very well written. So it's not, and some of the concepts are kind of hard to explain. So it's a very long document, and you can read it.
And you should, because it strengthens your position to recruit people, for sure. Correct. Yes?
What's the relationship between the platform at the state level and the platform at the national level?
Damn.
Loose. So the platform defines what Oregonians believe. The platform at the national level is assembled by the Democratic National Committee. The last one was assembled by a committee that was comprised of appointees by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Clinton campaign, and the Bernie Sanders campaign. And they met several times to negotiate the contents of the national platform. And if you remember, there were some things that Senator Sanders was very adamant about, and he was successful in getting those included. So it's a compromise process. No one gets everything they want, but it does move forward.
Yes.
I'm curious if you could speak to how Oregon's party platform relates to other states' platforms. Is there a lot of similarity between the states, or is there a lot of divergence?
The question was, how similar is Oregon's platform to the platform of other states? I have not looked at the platform of other states, so I don't know. I would guess that there's certainly a core set of values that you find consistent amongst all those, like women's rights and probably education, shelter, the things that really define the Democratic Party. I would expect those to be consistent across the board.
And I saw a question in the back, yes? No? Okay.
Thank you. So, whether you approach this with enthusiasm or great trepidation, the 2020 Democratic National Convention is underway. If you watch this stuff, the Democratic National Committee has been writing the documents that govern it. The 2020 election is going to be very, very exciting. And the reason why is that it's a wide open field. That's not the president running for re-election like it was in 2012, and we had one candidate. We're going to have multiple candidates from which to choose, and there's no clear front runner. The pictures here are the 6 candidates that the Washington Post recently listed as the top 6. So this section is about how you could participate in the Democratic National Convention if you would like to do so. So, as I said, the Democratic National Committee is currently writing the guidelines for the selection of convention delegates. When they get that document completed, they issue it to the states, and the states then develop their own plans on how they will implement those guidelines for the delegate selection. And then, concurrent with that, the Democratic National Committee allocates delegates to the states and selects the convention site. There, in 2012, there was something like 3,500 delegates that were allocated to the states. In the last convention in 2016, it was reduced by about 1,000, and there were around 2,500 delegates. And as you can imagine, if they lower the number of delegates, then those are the fewer positions that we get to fill here to represent Oregon. So, what I'll be talking about is past delegate selection processes, which odds are, unless they do some radical changes, is going to be very similar to what you're going to see happen in 2020. So in the past, any registered Democrat to run to be a convention delegate. It's been hard getting the information out because this is not something that people track. So it tends to be people who participate in the party itself. So precinct committee persons are generally well informed about these processes, and then some publicity is out there so that other people could participate as well. There have been in the past 3 possible elections for delegates. So this is another case where the election process itself is very, very complicated. So the 3 groups of people that we've had in the past are elected at the congressional district level, and then we elect them at the statewide level. And then there's another category called the PLEOs, which stands for Party Leader Elected Official, and then those are elected separately. And the concept there is that there are people like perhaps state representatives or chairs of parties or officers who are given a special path to go to the convention, and then they register in this category. They also qualify for the other categories as well. So this is roughly how the delegate selection process has run in the past. So the first step is that the delegate selects the candidate that they're going to support. So if you're a Joe Biden fan and Joe Biden runs and he's your guy, then that's who you will pledge yourself to represent in this process. If Kamala Harris is your candidate, then that's who you select. And then the Democratic Party of Oregon will open a process where then you can register to run as a delegate, and then you declare your candidate preference when you do that. And typically, this process lasts a little bit longer than the May primary. So if you picked a candidate who ends up not getting any votes and will not qualify for any delegates from Oregon, and that happened to be your person, you can move your selected delegate to one of the candidates that was successful. So then the May primary happens, and what they do if multiple candidates win is that they start proportioning delegates based on the votes that they received. So if one candidate gets 60% and the other candidate gets 40%, then candidate A would get 60% of the delegates and candidate B would get 40% of the delegates, apart from the whole superdelegate issue. And then in the past, there would be two conventions. There would be the conventions held within each of the congressional districts. So we have 5. So in 2016, I think it was June 4th, we actually had 6 conventions because the 2nd congressional district is so big they had 2 over there for them. And then each of the other congressional districts had a convention where all of the delegates that were allocated at that level were elected. And then 2 weeks later, they had a statewide convention where the balance of the delegates were elected by people who had registered for that convention. And again, any Democrat can run to participate in the convention, and any Democrat could run to be a delegate at the convention. And also they elected the PLEO candidates. So in 2012, it was a much simpler process because we had President Obama. President Obama was running for re-election. There was one candidate, and so all of the delegates were pledged to President Obama, and then it was just a matter of running for the delegate slots, either from your congressional district or at the statewide convention. And those two together, along with the PLEOs and the superdelegates, comprised our delegation that we sent to Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2016, it was a little bit more complicated because we had 2 candidates that qualified for delegates. And so what we did there was that we split the conventions into 2 segments. So there was actually a sub-convention for each of the 2 candidates in the convention. So they would get together in the 5 congressional districts. They would separate off into 2 groups. The 2 groups would elect their respective delegates that were allocated proportionately by the number of votes that they received in the primary. And then we got together in mid-June to elect the at-large delegates. Again, the convention divided up into 2 groups of people, and they elected the delegates based on the proportion, and then that plus the PLEOs, which were elected by everybody, and the superdelegates made up the delegation that went to Philadelphia. So there's a possibility that there will be more than 2 candidates in 2020, and it'll even get more complicated. So if, for example, 3 candidates qualify for delegates, then each of the, if they do in the future what they've done in the past, each of the congressional districts then would divide into 3 separate sub-conventions, and the state convention would have 3 segments. And then all of those delegates would be allocated, and that plus the superdelegates will be who Oregon sends to the convention to represent. And what is especially exciting about this one is that, well, number one, the role of superdelegates will most likely be diminished, because one of the things that they did in 2016 was that they had the Unity Commission, and they were committed to either eliminating or minimizing the influence of wild cards, which were superdelegates. And then the second thing that could possibly happen is that we end up with a brokered convention. So for the first time in decades, we will actually have votes on the floor, and we could have multiple votes on the floor that end up selecting the nominee for the Democratic Party. Yes, John.
I just want to point out that there are people in the room who were delegates at the 2016 convention, and I don't know if you want to raise your hands, but I know personally I'd be happy to talk to anybody about the experience there and hopefully do that.
So everyone on the line is going to miss out on that experience, but in the room we have a number of people who were delegates in the past conventions, and we can hang around afterwards to talk about that process if you would like to. Would you please raise your hand if you've been a delegate to a prior convention? So we have John, Rosa Colquitt, and Leah. I can't see it because you're in the dark. Cool. Thank you, John. Any questions about the convention? Yes.
Is there a minimum vote threshold that a candidate has to get in order to get delegates to the convention?
Yes, and those will be written in the guidelines of the Democratic National Committee, which they're working on now. So like in Oregon is one of the later primaries, so it's possible that they could start in January with 6 candidates or 5 candidates, and then by the time Oregon gets to the primary, we're down to 3. Yes? No, those are just a special category of delegates reserved for people who are party leaders, but they're not superdelegates, and they are also pledged. So the main distinction of superdelegates is that they're not bound by the vote in the primary. So in 2016, we had 13 superdelegates. 3 were pledged for Bernie Sanders. 10 were pledged for Hillary, even though Bernie Sanders got 56% of the vote. So that's the distinction between superdelegates, where they get to choose the candidate that they vote for, and everyone else who are bound by the candidate that they pledged for way back when they registered to run as a delegate to represent the state of Oregon. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? So what I hope you learned today was what the role is of a precinct committee person, what the rights are of precinct committee persons, and if you would like to study more about parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules of Order, you can register for that at pdpo.org. We will be starting those meetings in about a month. And those the virtual meetings will be using Zoom meeting technology, which gets as close as you can to being in the same room without being in the same room. Those of you in the Portland metro area have the opportunity to join one of the 3 groups that meet together. And if you would like more information about them, please come up and talk to me afterwards. I'd be glad to share you information about what it means to join those and what they do. We talked about the elections in which you have the right to participate in. We talked about the party platform and what it means to be a Democrat and how to find out more information on that if you would like, and then how to participate in the 2020 Democratic National Convention. So we have a group called the Advancement of Democracy Oregon, and that is the URL, advancementofdemocracy.org. If you would like to join this group and work together to achieve these goals, you are more than welcome to join. You just go to the website and click the join button, and then we collect your contact information. Yes, ma'am.
How can I join that without giving Google my contact information?
Talk to me. And we can do it without you sending it over the internet. Yes?
Is there a handbook somewhere, aside from the parliamentary procedure, that describes what we've just gone through?
No.
Org chart and timelines and so forth?
Not that I'm aware of. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to put this together, because this is not, it's very complicated information, and it's not readily available. So, as I said earlier, this presentation will be divided up into its 5 components, and we will post this on the internet. They will be posted at this website, advancementofdemocracy.org, so you can go back and review this material fairly easily. So we also have handouts, so they're quarter-page handouts here. They might be over by the registration sheet at the door. That has the URL that you can look this stuff up. Yes, Leah?
This may be beyond the scope of this presentation, but did you talk at all about participation in state party functions, like in the State Central Committee and the Congressional District Committees?
I did not, because I didn't want to scare them away. So and Leah is chair of the Second Congressional District. They build a very close relationship with their representative, and they represent their constituency to the representative of that district.
So it is another layer, another facet of involvement in the party. If you decide that you are interested in participating and you really like it, county level is definitely where you get in at the Precinct Committee Person level. But there are further opportunities if you're interested in participating more at the state level. We'll be doing our reorganizations at the end of this year. So there will be opportunities to be elected to the State Central Committee as well as to the Congressional District Committee. And just for anybody who's interested in participating, the Democratic Party Board of the State Central Committee will be having its next meeting in Pendleton, in Southeast, this upcoming weekend, June 9th and 10th. So if you're interested in moving along the halls of Pendleton to see how the Democratic Party Board functions, you can certainly do that. There will be closer meetings later in the year for the coordinated part.
And we really should have had you come up to announce all that stuff. So she went into much more detail. So Leah LaFleur went into much more detail about the activities of the Democratic Party of Oregon. The congressional district committees meet generally once or twice a quarter. The State Central Committee meeting is once a quarter, though she announced that the next one is coming up next weekend. The two The two fair weather meetings are generally held outside of the Portland metro area, and the other two meetings are generally held somewhere within the Portland metro area. We are going to Pendleton for the next one, and I don't know the location of the third quarter one. Do you know? So somewhere we'll be going across the state of Laurel. So the third quarter meeting will be in Eugene, and then the fourth quarter will probably be back here in the Portland metro area. These are also open to everyone, so even if you're not a delegate, you can go watch the party operate. It's a fascinating process.
Caucus meetings are open to all registered Democrats.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
Caucus meetings at the State Central Committee meeting are open to all registered Democrats, so you can participate even if you're not a Precinct Committee person.
Yes, so Leah pointed out that any registered Democrat can participate in these activities, and you can hold many of these offices even without being a PCP. So any registered Democrat is encouraged and welcome to participate in this stuff. Any other questions? So I just wanted to leave you with a few quotes that Bernie Sanders said, and this is so important to us who are trying to make the Democratic Party the party of the people. What he said was, "My campaign is about a political revolution. Millions of people are standing up and saying enough is enough. Our government belongs to all of us and not just a handful of billionaires. The only way change happens is when people come more significantly involved in the political process, and we certainly saw that happen since the election in 2016. And finally, he said, real change never occurs from the top down, but always from the bottom up, which is what you are. You are the ground level of the Democratic Party of Oregon. You have the power to elect the people that run this organization, and so ultimately the responsibility rests with you to do the right thing. And he said, let's understand that when we stand together, we will always win. The worst thing that Democrats can do is not work together and hold on to positions that divide us and not unite us. Democracy is based on compromise, and if we get 80% of what we want, that's a huge win. Again, you can donate at donate.uphillmedia.org. We would love to have $7 or $27. We will take up to $2,700 if you would like to really bless us with your generosity. Any final questions today? Yes? So, advancementofdemocracy.org is where we will post all of these segments, and it's going to take us a couple of days to format it, but it'll be up there. Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I hope you got something out of this.
All right, everybody in the audience, thank you for joining us. We are going to be right back, hopefully with an interview. I've got Josh and Amy. They're going to be the camera crew and reporter. And so just give me a few seconds. Hopefully we'll get that set up, and they've got an interview. Thank you all for being here. Please share this. The information here is absolutely valid for all states, the rights and privileges, the powers. So thank you for being here. Please share this. I'll be right back with an interview. See if I can crank up one of Marcus's tunes. Marcus, you still there? We'll crank up the tunes for you on WUHM. We're almost there, everybody. Setting up that interview here. I totally had to kill the audio. All right. I think we have an interview here. 1 second, everybody.
Thank you so much for coming. How did you like the presentation?
I liked it a lot. It was very informative, and I think that it will definitely help me be a better precinct committee person and represent Democrats of my area.
So do you have any other questions that weren't addressed, or do you feel like they were all covered?
I think for a noob such as myself, it was pretty informative. I have the basics, and I know that if I do have questions later, then I can ask around, and I know that I'll get the answers that I need.
Cool. And what made you become a PCP in the first place?
That's a bit of a difficult question to answer, but ultimately, I think that the Democratic Party needs to have a transformation from the grassroots and represent all sorts of demographics. And in my county, I think I'm probably one of the youngest PCPs, so I'm definitely glad that I have the responsibility of representing young Democrats at county Democratic meetings in my area.
Oh, I'm Amy Fox. I'm the communications chair for the Multnomah County Democrats. And your name is?
Thomas Risley.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas.
All right, everybody. That was an interview there. Amy Fox with Thomas, a PCP member who is going to use his new powers to affect change in the Democratic Party. And we thank him for being there. It's a great presentation. Thank you all for being here and sharing this and putting up with our technical issues. And I just want to check and make sure we don't have another interview on the way. We'll be right back. go out with that ending video that I was supposed to start this with. All of this will be cut up into smaller segments and will be available on our YouTube channel, Uphill Media YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Uphill Media, or you can go to advancementofdemocracy.org and we'll have it up on that website too, broken up into various pieces for you. This is how we fix our democracy. We have to learn how it works and then change the rules. Be right back. All right, everybody. So we're done with the official stuff. Anybody that's still there? What do we got? Like 33 of you left. So that was an awesome thing. I don't know if you realize what was going on there, but we had Josh Latto, who's the technical director for the Democratic Party of Oregon. He was holding the camera there. He was helping us. He's been there for hours. You know, there were a lot of people there that were already precinct committee peoples that have hold other roles in the Democratic Party of Oregon already, and they're, you know, this is how we learn to control the party, right? Actively engage. It's exactly what Bernie wanted us to do. So, thank you all for being here. Wow, that's really loud there. Fix that. Thank you all for being here. If you didn't see it enough times, we're gonna go out with the video that I was supposed to intro with. Larry played it there for everybody there, but we were still having technical issues. The solo, while it worked great, thank you everybody, appreciate that, your comments. Hey Jay and Barb and Marcus, what's an error? Go to bed, Marcus, really, go to bed, jeez. Anyway, what was I saying? So the solo interface is crazy. It was not working right. I gotta talk to those guys. It's a cool new interface, but it's got some problems, some serious problems. But the solo itself worked fine. It worked fine. Anyway, we're gonna do more of these. We're doing more of these. Larry and Amy put together a nice presentation there. I want to thank Ashley and Nancy and Josh and Laura Livengood and Marcus and everybody who worked on content on this and helped put this together. And this takes a big old team, and you know, nobody's got their Soros check yet from this. We're funded by you, so thank you, everybody. We're going to go out with the video. I promised you I would. Or maybe I threatened you with it. All right, here it is. We will I'll talk to everybody. What is today? Tomorrow. We should have something going on tomorrow. Progressive California. And then on Tuesday, we've got the primary, right? So we've got the California primary. Join us for that because we'll be covering that. And thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. I like making them. I do. I wish I could just do that. All right, here we go. Here's the video. Bye, everybody.
I want every kid in Oregon and Washington and Vermont to understand that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, does well, takes school. What? Oh. Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh my. I think there may be some symbolism here.
In 2015, when Bernie Sanders announced his campaign for president, many of us woke up in our democracy.
I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars.
His passion was infectious, his energy endless, and we worked together to do the impossible, challenge the establishment, and elect a true representative of the people. We worked hard, fought many battles, and learned a lot about how democracy should be and how it actually works in a corrupt system ruled by greedy billionaires. Ultimately, we lost. Not just the election, but faith in our election process. We saw how the DNC rigged its own primary, lied about it, and continues to put its thumb on the scale for candidates that will do the bidding of corporate interest, not the people. In 2017, despite all the anger, we rallied to elect more progressives in special elections. Lessons learned, we are smarter, more organized, and more determined than ever to clean up our house and make it worthy of the people it serves. The 2018 midterms are here, and we are winning even more. Our Revolution candidates have a 40% win record to date. That's a better win record than the Tea Party had in 2010. This is how you take back your power. This is what democracy looks like. This is what we must continue to do as we prepare for 2020. PCPs are the worker bees of the Dem Party. They have the power to shape the narrative in their neighborhoods. They have the power to affect change one person, one household at a time. They have the power to elect decent party leadership and control those who wish to use their position for personal gain. PCPs are the first line of offense and defense for the Democratic Party. It's time to wield that power and reshape the party into something we're all proud of. A party that walks the talk. Prep for 2020 begins now. Are you ready? The power is in your hands to make your Democratic Party what you want it to be.
I've been lied to, misled, built about what they said, lifted only to be let down. I've been taken for a ride, given power to decide, only to find out I was wrong. But I learned to tell the ones who fake it from the few really fit to run. Just follow the money they've been taking, and the truth will shine like the sun. I'm so tired of lies now, babe. Don't wanna compromise, no way. And I feel the burn for someone who can't be bought, to back the man who's fought for the people of America. Agenda, who's the biggest spender, party personality. Soundbite, get it right, entertain him, it's a fight. Pick the one who most looks like me. Don't speak of any real solutions. It's a shock appeal they're looking for. Don't criticize the institution, but I can't take it anymore. Aren't you tired of lies now, baby? It's time for us to rise, no more maybe. And I feel the burn for the truth to come across, to melt away the gloss and reveal the motivations. And you'll feel the burn for integrity to lead, focus on the needs of the people of America. Somebody's tugging at your heartstrings, saying what you want to hear, but they're just a pawn to the real king, playing upon your fear. a puppet string, but can't control the love we bring. The fire is out, the hour is down, the tide is set to turn.